So just, first off, thank you to 4-H. Thank you to all of you students in the room that I know have come from all across North Carolina to be here today. So I do want to take the time to appreciate you all. Appreciate the leaders in the room. I see a lot of adults in here as well that I'm sure have been helping you all throughout the whole couple of days you've been here. So if y'all don't mind, give them a round of applause too. Alright, so I'm going to talk a little bit about myself. How many of you like to know what's going to happen before it actually happens? Raise your hands. Okay. For those of you that did not raise your hand, here comes the spoiler alert. I'm going to tell you how it's going to go down. I'm going to talk a little bit about myself, say what I do. I'm 22, by the way. So yeah, Jeff is only 11 years older than me, so we're like the young bodies in state government right now. And then I'm probably going to go into a couple of values and a couple of traits that I've taken with me throughout my work in state government. And then we're going to end it off probably taking a pledge to a couple of values. I know that you are here to talk about character and conviction, your values, your beliefs, and how you should, take these and hone in on them and take them and grow as you grow, because you all have some of the brightest futures ahead of you. Being engaged in an organization like this, honestly, is something truly remarkable. You all are truly the leaders of your grade, of your cohort, of your schools, the ones that are the most involved, the ones that are really going to be movers and shakers in plenty years to come. And the funny part was too, Christy Norris. One, let's give Christy a round of applause wherever she is. Where's Christy? Christy she asked me for a biography, and I thought, oh gosh, Chris, I'm only 22, I don't have a biography. I felt like I was born yesterday, and then a few hours after that, I was in high school, and then here I am today. So actually, my biography to her was, Chris Jones is a Concord native. He attended North Carolina State University. He studied political science. He has a job. Boom, like that. So, I heard someone say, woo, are there some North Carolina State University fans in the room? Okay, Wolfpackers. So yeah, Concord native. Raise your hands of who's familiar with Concord, North Carolina. He is from Concord behind me. So one more time, raise your hand who's familiar with Concord, North Carolina. Okay, all right, not as many. Don't you always wish that people knew your city more? Exactly. Who's familiar with NASCAR and the Charlotte Motor Speedway? Okay, more hands. Surprise, it's in Concord, North Carolina. Okay, so let's love Concord a little bit more. Throughout high school, I was engaged in a lot of different civic organizations, a lot of leadership organizations. Organizations like 4-H, not necessarily 4-H, but I'm sure that you all do take part in organizations too, like National Honor Society. Any members of National Honor Society in here? National Technical Honor Society, HOSA, all that good stuff. Because when I applied to NC State, I actually chose nutrition as a major. And I was going to be a doctor, and I was going to save the world, and I was going to save lives, and cure cancer, and do all that other good and great stuff. Then I took biology when I got to college. That will scare you off. And I quickly switched over to political science because when I graduated went to a school called Coxmill High School. When I graduated, it was 2012, an election year. And if you've ever been on a college campus on an election year, you can't make it from your dorm to the class without getting hounded by at least 30 people asking you, are you registered to vote? 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 I'm just taking my backpack. I'm like, yes. It's almost like I wanted a sticker that said, yes, I am registered to vote. Thank you for asking. But at NC State, I quickly got involved into some policy things, worked with an Institute for Emerging Issues, which is actually where I met Luke and a lot of other 4-H members. And I also spent some time at the Eastern 4-H Center for a leadership program, if you all ever hear about that when you get to college. After the end of my sophomore year, I had the pleasure to gain an internship in Governor McCrory's office to the state internship program, something that you all should consider as you grow. The state internship program, it's not just the governor's office, it's all across the state, whether it's agriculture, whether it's wildlife resources. I mean, we are sending students to be interns at museums, to be interns at the Department of Justice, to be interns at the General Assembly. And I actually, and you can apply to as many as 6. So I applied to 6. And this was the last one that I thought I would get. So it's crazy how the world works. And this was the only one that interviewed me. So, went in for the interview, and I was able to get the job as an intern in Community and Constituent Affairs. Community and Constituent Affairs is pretty much that first contact that anyone has when they reach out to a politician. That's the department you get placed with. Those are the people that are going to answer the phone. Those are the people that are going to read the emails. Those are the people that are going to read the letters, the petitions, everything. Trust me, we do get plenty of petitions. And those are people that kind of sort through all of that and cycle it off and make sure that we can connect you all with the appropriate people. So I spent my summer there, traveled across the state a few times, and then came back to NC State, was offered a part-time job with the governor, continued to work there until graduation. I graduated early by about a year over the summer. So I graduated on a Friday and was offered a full-time job to start that Monday. And the only thing I regret is taking a full-time job where you only get 2 days of vacation before you have to show up to work after graduation. So whatever you all do, please take some time after you graduate before you go into any kind of full-time role. So let's see. So some of the values that I've taken with me as I move on, as I grow, have interestingly, and I had a whole speech written and everything like that, but over the past couple of days, it's just kind of transformed a little bit, and I really wanted to touch on some deeper things. So my 2 favorite values are love and compassion. And I do have a quote, it's by the Dalai Lama. How many of you are familiar with the Dalai Lama? Okay, for those of you that are not, he's a Buddhist monk, and one of the wisest. How many of you all have like a wise grandma? Yeah, that's like the wise grandma for everybody, okay? We can just open up a Dalai Lama book and read everything there. And one of his quotes, one of my favorite quotes is, love and compassion are necessities and not luxuries. Without them, humanity cannot survive. Love and compassion are necessities, not luxuries. And without them, humanity cannot survive. Given the state of the world today, don't we all think that love and compassion is kind of needed right now? Shake your head if you agree with me. Thank you. When it comes to love and compassion and why they're my favorite, why they're my most valuable, because I'm a humanities guy. So everything I think of when I look out at the world, I think of it from a humanities perspective. I think of preserving us and sustaining us and how we can live and grow into a positive future. And when it comes to love and compassion, it's almost like a multiple choice test that you have to go through every day when it comes to your decision making. So, some of you may have tests of love and compassion today. Some of you may face that test tomorrow, next week. And you'll never know particularly what the right answer is when it comes to love and compassion. You'll never know what's the good decision. You'll never know what's the bad decision. But when you choose that decision, you've put yourself kind of on this live stream, and everything will have an effect that goes in that way. So with being loving and being compassionate and making those decisions, there will be times where you've made a decision that's not based in love, that's not based in compassion. Somebody may be being bullied or something like that, and you've chosen to take option B and continue on and just walk away. And you will not know the effect that's had immediately. You will not know what that may cost. At NC State, I know that this past weekend, we've just had 4 suicides that have happened in this class. And that's heartfelt. And it only makes me think, what would have happened if someone would have showed that young man some more love and some more compassion? And when you do make the decision that is filled with love and compassion, you may not know that either, because decisions have consequences, but the consequences aren't always immediate. You may not always know, but every decision you make will have a consequence. Yesterday, I went to Chipotle and had a burrito with extra beans, and then I had to go meet the governor right after, and that was a bad decision. It was a bad decision. Not just for me, for everybody else in the room as well. It was just a bad decision. But not every decision, not every consequence is a decision based in love and compassion, and you get a lot of backlash. You get a lot of people that will challenge you. You get a lot of people that will not agree with you. And that's when it takes the character, that's when it takes the conviction to stand your ground and say, no, I'm making this decision because this is where my heart is at. You are at a beautiful place where y'all can start to understand where your heart is at and what really matters to you. That's why you're here, so you can discover and learn what really matters to you, and you can live a life that pushes you for that, even when you face challenges and obstacles and people that are going to yell that you are wrong, and people that are going to say that what they believe is right. Like Senator Jackson said, there are some loud voices in politics these days. Very, very loud voices that carry and grab people along with them. And you have to be firm in understanding that, you're going to stand your ground and know that in my heart, I'm going to choose a decision based out of love and based out of compassion. So love and compassion are always going to be hand in hand, and you have to have the conviction to stand your ground. I know some of you are probably wondering, how do we become loving and compassionate? Or what do I need to do that shows that I'm loving and compassionate? But when it comes to love and compassion, you have to think, it's pretty simple. The words sometimes are literally painted right on the wall. How many of you have a high school that has values or a mission statement or an oath where you're going to be respectful, responsible, everything like that? How many of you have that? Raise your hands. Those are ways that we grow to be compassionate and grow to be loving. You have to have respect for others, right? You have to be willing to listen to others. Even if you don't agree with others, you show that respect by giving ear, by thinking through, and then by making an informed decision. We have to be responsible and take hold of our actions, and even when we make mistakes, we have to be responsible to admit that we have made a mistake or we've made the wrong decision, and we're going to do what it takes to move forward from there. You have to be courageous. To be a person with character and conviction, there will be times where it will test your courage. And you have to be courageous and stand in the face of challenge and know that you know what your goals are and what your values are, and you're not going to be moved from those. Being honorable, being respectful, being empathetic. Empathy is one thing that we always have to take with us, because empathy really shows that even if you haven't gone through that same experience, a lot of us don't go through the same experiences as other people. But I think it's important for us individually to be caring for that experience, or to show that, okay, you are taking a different walk of life, but you know what? I love you and I respect you as a human being, and that's how you're going to lead your life. So empathy is very important as well. And because I don't know about you all, but my goal in life has always been to be a good person and live a good life. Who agrees with that? Who wants to be a good person and just live a good life? Exactly, right? So being a good person and living a good life, these are kind of the things that we need to take with us that guide us there. Everything that we do will always have an effect on somebody else. So when I think about all the lives that, NC State has seen pass away and everything like that, all I wonder is what would have happened if someone would have extended extra love? What would have happened if someone would have gave that person a hug when they really needed it, or listened to them when they were crying, or walked with them when they needed someone to talk to? You all, as young leaders, have to be that person. You all, as young leaders, have to be that person that reaches out, and even if it's uncomfortable at times, knowing that deep down it's something that you have to do, that has to be within your principle to do that. And if you can show that courage, it will pay off. Little by little, every little thing that you do, every little gift that you give in life will continue to pay off, and it will come back in the form of blessings and everything else that takes you through life. And I think that's kind of the impetus to how we grow as a collective society, how we grow as, civically engaged people. That's how we grow in our hearts, as you all said, in our hands, as you all said. Those are the things that really help us maintain a society where we're all going to be stable and loving and caring. And also, I do want to open up some of these last few minutes for any questions that you all may have. I know I didn't speak too much about my role, so I will let you all know kind of what I do. Like I said, I started off in community and constituent affairs, but over the last 4 months, I switched over to legislative affairs. So instead of dealing with, constituents on a first-hand basis, now I'm dealing with General Assembly members. And if you understand, I'm sure some of you have already talked about the North Carolina General Assembly and the state of everything and stuff like that. When I tell people I went from community affairs to legislative affairs, I always say I went from one kind of crazy to a whole other kind of crazy. Yeah, I know you all did talk about the budgeting process, correct? So right now we are going through that budgeting process. My boss, Governor McCrory, he was meeting with the Senate leader as well as the House leader this morning at the mansion because they have to go through budget negotiations. And I'm sure you all talked about parties and platforms and everything like that. Although North Carolina, the majority party is the Republican Party, even between the House, the Senate, and the governor's office, we all three of us sometimes have different values and different views. We disagree amongst ourselves on how money should be used. The governor stands for more in education, more in efficiency, and more in the economy. Even members of our own party may disagree with that. So it's not even a Democrat, Republican, majority, minority thing. It could be how many of you are from rural North Carolina, rural parts of North Carolina? And how many of you are from urban parts of North Carolina? Have a lot of lovely rural people in the room. I love that. But even there's a divide when it comes to policy. How do we spend money in rural education versus how do we spend money in economic education? Are we letting the urban education communities get more money just because they're more populated? Well, what about us? We have different values. Maybe we want more money for agriculture programs when we're in high school. Or maybe we want more money for technology programs when we're in high school. Maybe the urban communities have a different approach to that. So there are all sorts of disputes, and we have to come together, and it takes kind of that negotiation that they're having right now through budgeting. It takes those kind of talks to figure out what's the best way to spend, as Senator Jackson said, this $22 billion. That's a lot of money. I never realized how much money there was until I got into state government. Because when they told me the budget was $22 billion, I'm like, wait, billion? Like with capital B, billion? Or like million? I can see million, but you mean billion? It is a lot of money in state government, and it is a big business to run. And one of, I guess primarily in my role as legislative assistant, the governor has 2 lobbyists. Just as Senator Jackson was saying, lobbyists are the people that are kind of the middleman for policy and your General Assembly members. So even the governor has his own set of lobbyists because he can't go over there and talk to them face to face. He has a team of lobbyists that go over there, and we have to push for our agenda as well. So we have 2 lobbyists on our legislative affairs team, and then you have myself, who kind of serves as a liaison between the General Assembly and the governor's office. So, have you all learned the billing process and how a bill becomes a law yet? Have you all kind of gone through that? Okay. So I have a couple of things that you may not know. One, I sign the bills as well, which is kind of exciting, I guess. I don't know. But one of my main things is making sure that the governor gets his bills, making sure that I brief him on the bill, and then making sure that he signs it or does whatever he wants to do with the bill, and then make sure it gets back. So in doing that, just the procedural things and everything like that, you walk over to the General Assembly, they have all these sheets of paper. Bills are big stacks of papers where you can't even like staple it. You have to get like these huge binder clips to clip them together. And there I go, walking to the mansion with this big old thing. I almost need a book bag to carry it over. And brief the governor on the bills, let him know what's in it, what's not in it, where our policy concerns are, who's going to win from this bill, who's going to lose. Is this bill more urban focused? Is it more rural focused? Is it talking about taxes, everything like that? And then he takes the time to think, reads over the bill, reviews the bill, considers his policy team, considers his legislative team, and then he makes his decision whether to sign it or not. And then I certify that and make sure it gets back to the General Assembly. But that's kind of the main focus on my role, is really getting him briefed up on the bills that come through as we finish out this last short session. And I will tell you this as well, that $22 billion budget, that comes in the form of a bill as well. So you can imagine little Chris Jones walking to the mansion with probably stacks about yay high, and it's going to be a sad day, and it's going to be a really hot and sad day. So I'm looking forward to a lot of sweating on that trip. But are there any questions about the executive branch? Any questions about my role? Any questions about clubs or organizations or values, beliefs, anything like that? Yes.
Do you know the governor personally? Like, do you talk?
Yes. As a matter of fact, I do. The first time I met the governor on a face-to-face basis, I was an intern, and it was after 5 o'clock, but they needed someone to take over some certificates to get signed. So I said, if it means I get to see him face-to-face, sure, I'll do it. So I walk over. It was a thunderstorm that day. The mansion's about 2 blocks away from the actual administration building. So I get to the mansion, he's in the meeting. So I have to sit outside. The AC is always blasting in the mansion. So now, not only am I wet and cold, the AC is now giving me hypothermia. And I'm sitting there and I'm just waiting and I'm waiting and I'm waiting, and eventually he's going to walk out of the room so I can give him these certificates to sign, and there he comes. He comes walking out, and he walks straight past me, doesn't see me, goes to the restroom. I'm like, oh my goodness. And then as he returns, he comes back and he asks me, what do I have for him? I tell him I have some certificates. He says, are you hungry? Mind, I've been sitting there waiting in the cold for about 45 minutes. It's almost 6:30. And he says, are you hungry? And I said, yes. Matter of fact, I'm very hungry. He says, well, come on, let me get you some cookies. And this is the only time I said something back. I said, well, sir, with all due respect, I would rather appreciate like a sandwich, because it's dinner time. But he just gave me cookies and lemonade. It's okay, though. We've blown past that. We're back to friends again. Although every time he walks around offering people cookies, I'm like, people really want sandwiches, sir. They really do. Thank you, that was a good question. Any other questions? Yeah?
Do your beliefs always line up with the governor's? Like, do you agree with the same policies that he has? Do you agree with the same policies that he has? Like, if you disagree, is your opinion valued? Does he weigh that?
Yes and no. And you'll understand this when you work for, I mean, any organizations or companies or businesses or firms. The people of North Carolina in 2012 elected Governor Pat McCrory. They did not elect Legislative Assistant Chris Jones. So, unfortunately, I know, right? How many of you would have voted for me at least? Okay, 33%. I'll take that. I'll take that. That's a good first run at it. I'll take that. Next year, I'm going to come in and have about 40%, and we're just going to build off of there. But no, it's you work for a leader. So he's the CEO of North Carolina, essentially. So yes, answer your question. Any other last couple of questions? Yes.
What's your favorite part of the job?
My favorite part, I took advantage of it today. One of my favorite parts of the job, don't judge me, I like Arnold Palmers. If you go to the mansion, you can get unlimited Arnold Palmers. So I probably had about 3 Arnold Palmers before I got here today. So that's one of my favorite parts. I mean, another favorite part though, a more serious favorite part, especially when I was in community and constituent affairs, when you are in these kind of roles in state government and the things you do directly have policy implications, do impact 10 million people across the state. One of my projects as an intern was, and this was as an intern, they allowed me to lead up one of the governor's initiatives. It was an HBCU internship program. How many of you are familiar with HBCUs or what that means? Okay. HBCU means Historically Black College and University. So there are plenty of HBCUs across North Carolina, but one of the things that they'd always lacked was getting internships, or especially corporate internships, for their interns. So one thing that we did as an initiative was to set out and try to connect more HBCU students with our corporate internships. And one of the people that was on that team was me. And it's trying to connect North Carolina Central students with Bank of America, with SAS, with RTI and Skanska and other huge IBM, other huge corporations based here in North Carolina. So imagine me just picking up the phone and calling Bank of America's main line and trying to get all the way up to the president. Very hard process. But that internship program, though, we were able to connect over 60 students that first year with jobs. And when it comes to internship programs, something you'll have to consider down the road. How many of you are going to be in college within the next 3 years? Exactly. Internships will be critical to your success because when you graduate, these are things that help you get in the door with companies. We connected over 60 students that first year, and we're trying to push over, trying to get more and more every year to connect to these companies and make sure that everyone, when they graduate, can have a successful future, can have a successful job, and a successful family. So maybe a last question at all? Yeah, yes. I'll do it that time. Yeah.
Do you ever regret getting into government, or is it something that you still continue to enjoy doing?
On Mondays, I regret it. On Mondays, I regret it a lot. Government has its good, its bad, and the bad days will sometimes be a drag to you. There are days when things that you wanted did not go your way. I mean, we live that time throughout all of life, yeah. But then there are good days. There are good days where you know that something that you did had an effect that changed lives. Something that you did had an effect where students in high school now have smart boards in every classroom across North Carolina, where students all across North Carolina, all the way out Manio to Cherokee, have Wi-Fi connection in their classrooms. Because 3 years ago, there were only about 30% of schools in North Carolina that had Wi-Fi access. What we have now tried to get to was 80%, and hopefully by 2018, we want 100% of every high school, middle school, elementary school in North Carolina to have access to Wi-Fi. I mean, it's Wi-Fi. If that's not the first thing you are concerned about when you walk into a building, then you're not from this generation. Because when I walk into a building, the first question I have is, hey, what's the Wi-Fi here? Why is it locked? What's the password? Can somebody please tell me the Wi-Fi password? So yes. And there was another question back there as well. Yes.
How do you feel about the Senate Bill 873?
873. Would that be the college's bill?
Yes, sir. Wow.
Yeah, one, let's give her a hand clap. So bills spark controversy all the time. All the time. And bills, there are so many bills that have good intentions, but maybe as a practice-wise, they're not the best. I'm not saying that bill is in any way. And I don't know the status of that bill. I know there was a lot of controversy surrounding it. But bottom line for me is any bill where you're trying to make college affordable and expand that affordability so that students can have opportunities to go to college, to get a 4-year degree, to graduate without student loans, which is a huge thing these days. I'm still paying off, well, I only graduated last year, but I've got some loans and they will hound you, and they will hound you for years to come. So anything that is for affordability in college, I personally stand for. So then that bill particularly, I don't know, but affordable access to college is something that we stand for. Any other questions? All right, are you sure?